recording.
She comes out to the shop with fresh baked cookies and helps me sweep up sawdust.
I'm the SOS.
That's true. She says she's the SOS, the sweeper of sawdust. And for that, I'm very appreciative, let me tell you. Okay, I would like to swing this table around a little bit. Sir, could you move over just a little bit? Let's swing this around. Yeah, grab the other end if you could. Let's just kind of pivot. Go to your left there. Okay, that ought to do it. Enough so that I can at least get the stuff here and you can see it with the camera. Okay, so how many of you consider yourselves to be fairly new woodturners? Okay, then I'm going to be speaking to you guys. I know that a lot of you have been doing this a long time and have a lot more experience than I do. And when I talk about stuff, a lot of it's going to be old news to you, and that's okay. I'm sorry, but I want to be sure to get the information to you other guys. Where do bulls live? Bulls live in trees, right? What do bulls and monkeys have in common? They both live in trees. So when I get wood, a branch, a log, whatever it is, the first thing I do is cut it into a length that I can handle, okay? If it's a great big thing, I may cut it into something maybe this long and cut it down the end and divide it into two halves. If it's smaller, like this one, then I may just leave it 4, 5, 6 feet long. And when I anchor seal the ends, and you know about anchor seal, it's that waxy emulsion you paint on the wood. And we'll talk about that more from time to time tonight. So I anchor seal the ends and wax them to slow down the drying process. If you can see from this, I don't know if you can get into that.
I can try.
You see the end is still checked. It'll still split if you don't get to it soon enough. So when you're doing green wood, you can't just fool around and go on vacation. You got to get it roughed out, or you're going to come back and it's not going to be any good. But if you have a nice long piece, the chances are pretty good you can slice off the end. You ladies understand about slicing off the split ends, okay? And that's what you're doing with the wood. You cut that split end off and get rid of it. And then I will cut a piece of wood that is about as long as it is wide. And then if it's big, I'll do this with a chainsaw. If it's small enough, I'll do it with a bandsaw. But I'm going to cut that end to end down the center and end up with two pieces. And then, once again, depending on the size, if it's about 12 inches and smaller, I'll go with the bandsaw. If it's bigger than that, I use a chainsaw. I always thought it'd be so cool to have a chainsaw. I told Judy one time, I said, honey, I want to get a chainsaw. She said, what do you need a chainsaw for? Well, all the guys have a chainsaw. And she said, it didn't work for our son, it's not going to work for you either. But when I became a wood turner, then it was okay. And now I have an indoor chainsaw and an outdoor chainsaw. The indoor chainsaw is electric. I use it in the shop. The outdoor I keep in the truck, so I can jump out and grab a piece of that roadkill if I need to. So when I have my half a log, in my shop I have a whole bunch of round cardboard circles. I think they're like 6 inches up to 29 inches. And I can, depending on the size of the log, I'll put one on top of it, tap a nail just in the middle to hold it in place, and then I'm going to cut off the corners with a chainsaw, then cut off the other corners, and that's my rough out. I'll put that on the lathe and turn it. If it's small enough, I'll do it with the bandsaw, and I'll end up with a nice round bowl blank. Now, if my bowl is going to be a smooth edge bowl, then I'm going to use the inside up and make a smooth edge bowl. If I want to do a natural edge bowl, I do the bark side up and end up with a natural edge bowl. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. The basic natural edge bowl is that style. So tonight, let me run you through some of the kind of the continuum of natural edge bowls for just a moment. I teach a class at the John C. Campbell Folk School. That's in North Carolina. And I was going to pass these around, but I won't take the time to do it. I have 3 catalogs up here for John C. Campbell if you're interested. Should I pass them around or what? I mean,
Why not?
oh, why not? Yeah, why don't you take one for the front row, pass one back 3 or 4 rows, and another one further back, so everybody can take a look at it. This is a fabulous place. I'm telling you, it's summer camp for adults. It's wonderful. They have almost 50 different categories of classes there, and each category has anywhere from a half a dozen to over 50 classes. Wood turning is fabulous. It's just, they have a dedicated wood turning studio, and it's great. There are 10 lathes in there, and with all the equipment, the tools and everything. And I'm teaching a class in April, the first week of April. So I'm still short a couple of students, so if anybody's interested, they'll still take you from here. It's a long drive, it's 3 days drive, but you can fly to Atlanta and they'll pick you up. So give it some thought, but this is not too far to go to John C. Campbell. It is marvelous. In that class, the long class, I teach natural edge bowls. The first day, we just do a standard smooth edge bowl, like some of these over on the table. Just learning techniques. We're using green wood, and we're learning how to rough out, we're learning how to shape, how to change the direction of the bevel by swinging the handle in order to make a curve, inside, outside, and then a little bit on how to finish them off. The second day, we work on the standard natural edge bowl, which is this shape. And then on the third day, we start with and each day, we take green wood and rough it out. And when I talk about roughing it out, let's talk about that for a minute. Here's a square one. When I rough out wood, the guidance is generally you want to leave it as thick as 10% of the diameter, okay? So if your bowl is 10 inches across, you want to leave the thickness about 1 inch thick. And I take it, I rough it out, I'll anchor seal it inside and out. I'll write on the bottom of it what kind of wood it is and the month and year that I anchor seal it, okay? And then I'll set it aside. I put it on a shelf in the shop for several months, just let it dry out. It's probably going to change shape, it's going to change to oval, it's going to warp, it's going to do weird stuff. But that's okay, it can do that. I'll put it back on the lathe and finish it up. In my class, in the morning, we'll rough out a square natural edge bowl, and then in the afternoon, I will provide a roughed out, dry, square natural edge bowl for each student to do the dry part. As you know, turning green wood is not the same thing as turning dry wood. It's just different. And I want them to experience both. So I think it's important to understand the difference as you're learning. If you rough something out and you do just that, you let it dry, and then in a few months you say, okay, I'm ready to do that, I want to get it. It's going to be a different feel. The dry wood is harder, it makes more noise, it's harder to cut, you have to go sharpen a little more often. That's okay, it's just what we do. So, no problem. But, so that next time, that 3rd day is a square natural edge bowl. I mentioned how wood will change shape. You want to leave it thick, so it warps, it changes to oval a little bit, and you want to be able to have enough wood for it to still be round. Look at this one. Can you see? That one didn't quite make it. That is hickory, and I had no idea. It was the first piece of hickory I did. I had no idea it was going to change so much to oval. There is not enough wood there for me to change it back to round and still have wood. But it's a great piece to show people because it really emphasizes how much it changes shape. The bottom, you can tell on that too, but you want to leave plenty of wood. Let's talk one more thing about square natural edge. So I'm going to talk about square natural edge bowls tonight. What I'm going to do is turn this piece into a square natural edge bowl. So would normally rough it out, anchor seal it, set it aside, then to bring it back. Now this is dry, I would bring this back, put this back on the lathe and re-round it, and then finish it off, sand it and so forth. But tonight, I'll just do with the one piece, and we'll sort of pretend the time has gone by for it to dry, and we'll press on. You need to know where square natural edge bowls come from. The answer is, they're like this, okay? So square natural edge, you think of bark all the way around, not on the square one, not on the ends, just on the sides, because it's on the two sides of the log. So you see that? There. So that lives right there at the top of that log. So for a natural edge bowl, once again, the inside of the tree now becomes the top, the inside of the bowl. One other thing I've got a warning about on square natural edge bowls. And I want to pass this around so you can see it up front. See it real easily. Here, pass that around so people can see it. On that one, what I want you to see is this line. You've got to leave it thick because that wood is going to warp this way as it dries. I did that, and that was one of the first ones I did, so I keep it in my kit to show at demos. And as it warped, it changed. It curled so much that I can't make that flat again. I can make the top flat, but I'll go through the center. I'll make the bottom flat. I'll go through. There won't be anything left. So take a look, and you'll see what I mean. Look at this edge right there, and you can see it's warped so much that it's no longer viable. Two others I want to talk about very briefly. I don't know if you, here's a log. Yeah, I bet you can't see it. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit.
There you go. That works.
There, okay. See how I've cut this log at an angle? What I've done, I call this the bowl cut, natural edge bowl cut on a bias. And what I end up with is a piece like this. So I mount that on the lathe here and here, and when it's spinning, I've got one point there and then one point here. And it's very similar to a natural edge, or to a square bowl. With a square bowl, I have 4 corners spinning around. With this, I have 1 corner spinning around close to the tool rest that I've got to get rid of. Boy, you got to be careful. Don't get your hands in there. But if this is a great piece. I don't want to take that home. I want to leave that with you guys. If someone wants to take that, you're welcome to it. It's a great piece. The two ends are really just, you can keep them or not. They're waste, just the angle piece in the middle. And then the last one I want to talk about, if we have time, is what I call a log bowl. And I'm using the whole log and turning out something like this. I had one right here. This is a demo piece I did for a club some time ago, but I'll pass this around just so you can see what a log bowl looks like while you're watching me do the other one. So, just like any other bowl, when you turn a square bowl, you mount the wood on the lathe, you round out the bottom, and put a tenon on it to grip it with a chuck. You turn it around, you mount it up on the 4-jaw chuck and hollow out the inside. With a square bowl, I'm going to flatten the face of it and then hollow out the inside, but it's essentially the same thing. And of course, the final step then is you turn it around again and you grip it in some manner in order to finish off the foot. So we'll go through those stages. I'll be using this bowl gouge for part of the demonstration. But in order to make it easier, I'll take it apart. In fact, for most of my demo tonight, I'll probably be using my 3/8 inch bowl gouge. Okay, I previously marked this piece of wood. If anybody came up and looked at it, you would have seen it. I just drew a line between the 2 corners here and the 2 corners there, had an X in the middle, that's my center. So I'm just going to mount that right there. Bring the tailstock up, tailstock on. Okay, now, what I'm going to try to do is get the top fairly squared up. Just because it's easier. As you learn more about natural edge bowls, we're not going to take the time to do it tonight, but as you learn more about natural edge bowls, you will find that there are ways to enhance the look of the grain in the final piece by how you mount it. So I'm just going to mount that up on that. I'm using a spur drive in the center and then a one-way live center. So I want to move the tailstock back. I want to leave the wood, so I'm just going to loosen that, crank the quill out a little farther, which moves the tailstock back, then tighten it back up again, and then retighten that. Now I'm good. I'm in the same place, but I have a little more working room for the banjo up here.
Are you using a 2-prong or a 4-prong?
This is a 4-prong. But 2-prong is absolutely valid. That's a good way to do it. A 2-prong generally you put in with the grain of the wood. 4-prong, of course, goes in 4 different directions. You know, whatever works. And this is pretty small. This is a pretty small 4-prong spur drive. I've got a much bigger one that I use on bigger pieces. Now, when I turn, I always wear a pair of safety glasses, if I can get it in around this microphone and around my hearing aid. When I turn, I also wear a glove. So, you know, I was doing a demo in my home club, my first club, Capillary Woodturners, and George Whipple raised his hand in the back. He said, "Yeah, George." He said, "Tom, don't ever wear a glove." Now, I got to tell you what George's background was. George and I were in the same wood turning class. We learned to turn. George is a retired hand surgeon, okay? And he said, "I have had to put back together so many hands from people who wore gloves or jewelry or whatever, got them caught in machinery and hurt their hand." He said, "Don't wear a glove." And I said, "Well, George, I absolutely understand and respect your opinion. You're a smart guy. You're looking at this a whole lot different than I am. From my perspective, I've got a piece of wood spinning around, and a lot of times it's oddly shaped. So I've got a ghost image on this cut on the bias with the 2 corners. You can hardly see where that wood is at all. So, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to keep my hand away, but if I don't happen to keep my hand fully away from it, I would like to protect my hand a little bit." Another guy told me, "Well, just cut the fingers out of your glove. You know, protect your side of your hand, but you don't have those loose fingers." I mean, you guys know, you don't wear loose clothing when you're turning. Long hair, you don't have your hair hanging down in front of the lathe. You tie it back, you put it someplace out of the way. And that's really important. One time, I was standing at the grinder on the right-hand wheel, my fine wheel, sharpening a tool, and the grinding wheel on the other side caught my sleeve and pulled my arm down into the grinding wheel. Fortunately, the platform was there, and I slammed my arm down on the platform, and it ripped a huge tear out of my shirt. Well, Judy, who you met just a little bit ago, was very sympathetic. Her first words when I went in and told her what happened were, "Your best denim shirt?" "But I'm okay, honey, but your shirt." So it worked out. But the point is, you know, loose clothing and stuff, you never know. In a half a second, a thousandth of a second, something can happen. Be careful, be careful. Okay, so the other thing, when I turn, I always wear glasses. If I'm doing pins with little tiny pieces of wood, you know, pen blanks, I only wear safety glasses. I don't wear a face shield. But if I go up any bigger than a pen blank, like the bottle stopper blanks, face shield comes on. I always do that. And I've gotten hit in the face with stuff, okay? I've had pieces break apart, bark come off and stuff. It doesn't happen very often. You got 360 degrees. If it comes off, it's gonna go someplace, but I'm just right here, so maybe it'll go a different way. But you never know, and I have gotten hit. So please, 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 protect your face, protect your eyes particularly. And for those of you who are old, as I am, you can get bifocal safety glasses. Did you know that? They're wonderful. I love them. I can see. Okay, so I have this piece of wood up here, and it's all set. This is gonna be the inside up here, or the top. And the first thing I have to do is shape this bottom. I'm just gonna cut away wood. You know, here, I'm not gonna be cutting much because, you know, it's way in, but here on these corners, I'm gonna be cutting a lot. Twice each time it goes around, I'll be cutting wood. So let me do that. One on the glove, one more comment. When I teach my classes, I give them the glove speech, okay? And I tell them, I say, you can do what you want to do. You decide for yourself. How you guys? How many of you wear a glove when you turn? Okay. And how many of you would not wear a glove when you turn? Okay. That's interesting. Usually it's about 50-50. In this case, it's just a little more weighted to not wearing a glove. But it's a personal thing. I've decided to do it. I want to explain why. So you see me up here. Those of you who won't do it, you know why I've decided to do it. Okay, so first thing I want to do is pull a tool out of the magic tool bucket. And if you're looking for a way to hold your tools, I've seen guys with racks on the wall and so forth. I use a tool bucket. And the reason I do is because I turn on different lathes in my shop. Plus, I travel, like for this, and, you know, our club does public demos, you know, trying to, you know, pass the word about wood turning, and I want to take my whole bucket of tools, you know, for the demo. So I took a regular bucket, you know, like one of those Home Depot, orange Home Depot buckets. This isn't from Home Depot. I put a bucket boss in it, so I had pockets around the outside, and I put some PVC tubes in it, not small ones, 4 big ones, and then a couple of small ones, just to corral my tools. Otherwise, they're all over the place in that bucket. This way, with, you know, in fact, why don't can you shine it down there for a minute? They can see what the bucket of tools looks like. Come up and look at it later. But I try really hard to always put it back in exactly the same place, so I know what they look like and where they are. Okay, next thing. I've mounted this piece of wood on here, and the first thing I want to do is turn the speed down before I turn it on. One of my lathes at home is a stubby. Anybody turn on a stubby? Isn't it a great lathe? Love it. I just love that stubby. It's such a great lathe. It's so versatile, and yet it doesn't take up a lot of space. But I went out to Stubby, which is almost 900 pounds, okay? I went out to Stubby, I got a piece of wood off the wood pile, went into the bandsaw, cut it round, nice and symmetrical, put a faceplate on it, mounted on the lathe, had the tail stock up, which I always do whenever I can, and then I flipped on the on switch, and in a tenth of a second, it was rocking front legs to back legs off the ground. Okay, I thought it was either going to fall against the wall or over on me, and I reached down and whacked that emergency turn-off switch, and it settled down. But it taught me a valuable lesson. And the lesson is always turn the speed down before you turn it on the first time when you put a new piece of wood on the lathe, because it can be very, very surprising, you know, if it's too fast. I think what had happened is probably the night before, at least the last time I was on that lathe, I had turned probably some pins, maybe bottle stoppers, so I had the RPM pumped up pretty good. I turned it on without checking it, so always turn it down. So, there we are. So, people say, how fast do I turn? I don't know what it is. This has a readout, let's find out. Okay. I usually don't know because my lathes don't have speed readouts on. That was about 1170. But the answer is, if I don't care what the numbers are, I'll turn it up until I get scared and then turn it down a little bit.
Tom, can I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
For a second? Baumgartner's is getting ready to lock their gates, and there's 3 cars parked over there. So if you parked in the Baumgartner parking lot, you might want to get moved.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Thank you.
You bet, that's important. And sir, I kind of blocked you. What do you want to go around this way? We can move this back here. I didn't mean to apply that, you're so fast you couldn't get through. Okay, so we're ready to turn. Let's turn this on and cut some wood. I'm using a 3/8" bowl gouge. And these are what I call the basic bowl cut. We take a couple more cuts and I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. So the basic bowl cut is with the bowl gouge. I've got, this is a shaft, I've got the flute here, and then this part right there, the part you put against the grinder to sharpen it, we call the bevel. And you guys all know, rub the bevel, ride. Rub the bevel, ride the bevel. There's another famous wood turner that says float the bevel. It's the same thing, okay? What the bevel does is gives you a pivot point, so when you're on the wood, you can pivot forward or back on that bevel to change the direction of your cut. Let me use a bowl as an example. Okay, so here's a bowl profile. And when I'm on the outside of this bowl, and can you guys see this in the back? Okay, when I'm cutting here, I want to cut a curve. So I have to change the direction of the bevel to cut that curve, which means I've got to swing the handle out here to do that. And right there, I'm cutting wood, and the bevel is riding right behind where I cut, right on the fresh cut, right behind the cut. And that's the secret that a lot of people don't understand when you do turners, is you're cutting with the tool right there, and the bevel is riding on the wood right behind. It's not uncommon for someone to get the handle in front of the bevel, and the bevel pries off the wood. So now, all you have is your cutting edge into the wood, and it's going to be real hard to keep it from kind of going in and out, making those ripples you see sometimes. If you can keep the bevel on the wood, then it can't pull itself in, and you're going to make a much smoother cut. So my advice is do everything you can to try to keep that bevel on the wood. So here I am, I'm making this cut. I'm using the basic bowl cut, which is, let's see, where can we do that? How about right there? Can we do it right there for a moment? So I've got the tool on the tool rest, the bowl gouge on the tool rest. The handle is slightly down, and I've got the flute rolled over at a 45-degree angle. Now, if I'm going to push away from me, I'm going to rotate over here to the actual tool rest. If I'm going to push away from me, I'm going to have the flute away from me. If I'm going to roll it over toward me and do a pulling cut, then the flute is toward me. 45 degrees is about the starting point. As you are turning, when you get more experience, open it up a little bit, close it down just a little bit, and see if it makes a difference in the type of cut and quality of cut you're getting. 45 is just a starting point. That may be the best, but you can open it or close it just a little bit and see if it makes a difference in your cut. When you're using, when you're using the bowl gouge with the basic bowl cut, you're cutting right here, right below the tip. So you're cutting wood right there. When you get down to the center of the piece, that's the part that has to go right over the center, not the tip. If you push the tip right across the center, you're not going to cut. You'll just end up with a little knob right there in the center that you wonder why you can't cut through. Raise that tip a 1/16 of an inch so the cut is right below the center, and you'll go right through it. I'll show you more when we get into that. Okay, so I'm going to continue this cut, and what I'm doing is coming in here like this. The bevel points in the direction of the cut, so I come in at that angle and I swing the handle down to make this curve. In this case, I'm on the tool rest back here. Okay, so I'm coming in here. The bevel points in the direction of the cut. I want to go in this direction, so the bevel is pointed that way, and as I cut, I swing the handle to change the direction of the bevel.
Oops.
So to take some more off here, I've got the bevel about a 45-degree angle. I'm kind of letting the tool pivot in my hand. Not only is it a good idea to wear a face shield to protect your face from pieces that may fly off unexpectedly, but it keeps the shavings out of your mouth too, okay? And that's a good thing. Okay, now I'm getting to the point where I can't make that curve anymore because this is in the way. So I'm going to back off, change the direction of the tool rest, bring that in here a little bit. Of course, you know you always stop the lathe when you want to move the tool rest. Who always stops the lathe when you want to move the tool rest? Okay, good for you guys. I can't put my hand up. I tried
Liars
to.
back there.
The what?
There's some liars
Oh,
back
you
there.
think so? I won't even repeat that. That won't be upset. Okay, but I mean, you really should. And I'm telling you, if you don't, what's going to happen? Well, you might bump the piece. Okay, you know, maybe it'll be a big surprise. Maybe it'll have a bad outcome. I don't know. But if you're almost to the end of a finished piece, stop the lathe when you move the tool rest because you can really mess up a piece, and I have. So now, I'm going to go in from this direction. Now, I've been cutting like this. I'm going to change and go in here, and you can make a flat plane on the bottom, on the top of the thing. You can make a flat surface. You can make a curved one. Let's pass that one around just for fun. See, that one's slightly curved on the bottom and on the top. The curves have to match so that the wood is the same thickness. So the curves, you do the bottom curve first, then you match it with the top curve, but it's got to be the same thickness so it'll dry evenly. You okay with it?
Yep. He's good shit.
Okay. Now, what's happened is that this wood being very wet has the spur drive has ground into the wood just a little bit, so I'll just clean that out just a tad. Clean the hole out a little bit. And then put that back on and see if we can make it work. Just put it back in the same hole on the top, the same hole on the bottom. Tighten it up. And the other thing is, I'm probably being a little too aggressive, and that's why it's stopping. So I'm going to back off from my aggressiveness just a little bit, and not take quite as deep as that, not push quite as hard. I think it'll be okay. What I'm doing is cut straight in. So as I cut straight in, the bevel has to point straight in. And I can't turn the handle, or that will change the direction of the bevel, which I don't want to do. I want the bevel to be nice and straight, all the way as I'm doing a nice straight cut. Okay, now I'm going to come down from the top. And I want to flatten off the bottom here, right where the tailstock is. So I can cut myself a little tail there. Gotta stop it to look, let's see how it looks. Okay, I need to go a little farther in there, if you can see that, and you can. You see there's still a lot of bark there. I don't want to grip that bark with the chuck. I don't think it's stable enough to do that. So I'm going to cut a little bit more of that wood away to get more of the bark away to get down the wood. See how that looks? Pretty good. That'll be okay. I want it to be straight though. I'm going to cut one more time, really be sure I got my... Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now, let's talk about tenons for just a moment, because that's an important part of what we do. Let me show you some pieces here. Let's take this one first. I have two bowl bottoms. There's that one and that one. So when I show you this, look at the bottom one. Don't look at the top one while I'm doing that. Don't be confused by that, okay? And here, I have a couple of different chucks. One is a chuck, these are profiles. One is a chuck that has straight up and down jaws like the one-way jaws. The other is a chuck that has dovetail jaws. So when you cut your tenon in that wood, when you cut your tenon, is it better to look at it like that? Probably so. Okay, when you cut your tenon, the tenon has to be the shape of the jaws of your chuck. So if the jaws are straight up and down, the tenon has to be straight up and down. If the jaws are dovetail, then you want to dovetail the tenon so it matches, so it'll hold better. The other thing is, how long should a tenon, what's the longest a tenon should be? The answer is, not as deep as the jaws are, okay? You do not want the tenon to reach down so far into the jaws of your chuck that it bottoms out. You want airspace, let's do it this way. You want airspace between the bottom of the tenon and the bottom of the jaws of the chuck, okay? If you don't have airspace there, then the tenon may be so long that you're not getting all the way down, and you want this, I don't know, how can I, pencil, here we are. Okay.
That looks a little better, yeah.
Okay, so here's your tenon. This face right here, just outboard of where the tenon is, has to be flat. So when this is up there and I'm cutting my tenon, I'm going to cut straight in and I'm going to square it up maybe with a spindle gouge, maybe with a parting tool or something, because I want that right there to be as flat as I can make it. So when I put it in the chuck, that flat circle around the outside of the tenon indexes right down on the top edge of the jaws, okay? Because you want the top edge of those jaws to absorb that force. When you turn this around and you start hollowing on the inside, you're putting force here. You start to build your hollow there. As you work out, you're putting more and more leverage against that, trying to pry that thing out. But if that is flat right there, then that force is going to go right into the top edge of the jaws, right there, and be absorbed. If it's like this, I don't know if you can see that. Let's do it here again. Can you see? Yeah, I guess you can. See how that is not indexed down on that because it's curved from the tenon up? It's not flat. So if I start hollowing this, then there's no resistance there, and I might start to pry that out. So when you make your tenon, whatever size you need, right around the outside of the tenon has to be flat, so it'll index right down on the top edge of the jaws when you put it in the chuck. How do you know how big to make the tenon? The answer is, you make yourself a little jig based on the size of your chuck. Right there is the smallest tenon I can make that these number 2 jaws on my one-way chuck will still grip. If it's smaller than that, the jaws will close tight and it won't have gripped the wood. At the other end of that spectrum, this is the largest tenon I can make for the number 2 jaws. So my tenon has to be bigger than this small hole and smaller than this big hole. There are a lot of more things to talk about on tenons that would be good to know. We won't take the time tonight, but we can talk about it afterwards if you're interested. Okay, so now I have the lathe running. I'm going to use my go-by here and put it up here to the bottom and just mark kind of an arbitrary mark. That's pretty big. I don't know if you probably can't see that. Maybe
Sure you can.
there.
You got it.
You see that?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's probably too big, so I'm going to go just a little smaller. Yeah, but I want to be sure that that's going to be small enough that it'll grip in my jaws, and it will. At home, I have all 6 of the one-way jaws, and I have one of those for each set of jaws. Please do that. It's so much easier than guessing and then having to put it back on the lathe. And, well, you can't put it back in the lathe and make it bigger, but you can put it back in the lathe and make it smaller. But, I've made so many mistakes on that, and I've finally learned to use a go-by. Okay, so now I want to cut this tenon. I'm going to cut straight in. For this size piece, I'll probably make that tenon 5/16, probably not as much as 3/8 inch long. And I just want to go straight in to that inside line. I decided that's better. And then I will use an 1/8 inch parting tool and square it up. I'll bring the tailstock, or the tool rest up here. Be sure it's going to move, it's going to spin all right. Turn it on, and then using the basic bowl cut, flutes at a 45-degree angle, and the bevel straight across the bottom. I'm just going to cut in there to that first line. Come back, make another cut. Just one more little cut, not much. Now that's not very, let me get some of that fuzz off there so you can see it better. That's not really very square. In fact, it's not square at all. But I can use a parting tool. I use one of the little 1/8 inch parting tool, and I can cut from the side here, or I can cut from this side here, and go straight in and square that up. I can even shave the bottom of this, just to be sure that's good and flat and square. So now I have a nice square tenon on the bottom that I can grip in that 4-jaw chuck. So I want to finish up this a little bit. Let me draw another circle on here just so you understand. So I want to leave that part of it just outboard of the tenon flat. And that's the part that will index on top of the jaws. But outside of that, I can go ahead and curve that around. Now let me show you another quick trick. The foot of the bowl, the base of the bowl, should be about 1/3 of the width of the bowl. So sometimes you can use the tenon to do that, sometimes you can't. But if you plan ahead, you make the tenon wide enough then you can incorporate some of that tenon into your foot. As long as it's bigger than a third, you can cut it down, shape it, do what you want to do. If you don't do that, you can cut this way and just make a little OG cut down there, which gives you a wider space to start your base when the time comes, okay? I think I'll make this a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner. So a couple more cuts across the top. Not quite good enough. Okay, so I think we're ready to take this off. If I was just roughing this out, that's all I do. Take it off, we'll turn it around and do the other side. If I had already roughed this out and I would put it back on and it had changed shape, warped, turned over, all those things, then I would want to sand it before I take it off. And the way uh-oh. Oh, but this won't be long enough.
So about 30 minutes?
There we go.
30 minutes?
Pardon?
30 minutes?
Oh, 30 minutes, okay, yeah, we're doing well. Thank you for the heads up. Okay, so I'll get my chuck. And as it always seems to be, I didn't pull out the chuck key. Just a moment. Okay, here's my chuck key. Pull the tailstock back out of the way. And then just tighten this up on that tenon. And you guys in the front row can see how that flat place part right outboard of the tenon is indexing right on the top of the jaws there. Okay, good and tight. Now, the next step is to flatten the top, or in the case of that one that I passed around that was kind of curved, I would have curved the bottom of that when I had it the other way, and now I would curve the top to match that curve. In this case it's flat, so I'm just going to slice right across the top, and then we'll put the, we'll do the hollowing. So, basic bowl cut, straight across the bottom, handle slightly down. The bevel is going to go straight across the bottom all the way. I'm not going to swing the handle, straight across all the way. As you see already, I don't have the tool rest a little too high, and that's fine for now. Because what I've done is just rough that out and smooth it off so it's nice and flat and it's about the right thickness for the size of piece. So I'll hollow the inside out. When you're hollowing out the inside, you got to have the handle way away from you because you want the bevel to point down into the bowl. So I want to start with the bevel pointing down in, I push down in, I swing the handle fairly rapidly to make that curve inside, but at the end, when I get to the center, the bevel has to be right straight across, right at center point. That way you have a nice smooth transition up the other side. You can self-diagnose this. When you're going in, if you look at it and you have kind of a little V-cut, that means you didn't get the handle back far enough. You had the bevel still pointed down into the bowl. If you have a little mountain down there, you brought the handle back too far and it's starting to come up again, so you're leaving a little mound in the bottom. So you can see what's happening. Adjust the handle accordingly so that your bevel is right straight across, right when you get to the center of the bowl. Now, since I'm roughing this out, I want to leave the thickness of the bowl about the same thickness as the flare, the flames at the top. And you can look down on this thing through the plate field as you start to cut, and you can see about where you're cutting and what the thickness is. And as you're cutting on the inside, you want the inside cut to parallel the outside of the piece. Okay, I'm going to make one more cut and show you one more thing that's important to know. I'm cutting it down and I'm cutting cross okay? As I cut down in, I'm cutting across the sides of the fibers, because the fibers are running this way, so I'm cutting this way across the fibers. Easy cut. When I make the transition in the bottom of that bowl and start to go toward the center, suddenly now I'm cutting right into the ends of those fibers twice every revolution. So it becomes much harder to cut, and as a result of that, I'm going to have to push a lot harder to get through that cut. So what you can do is don't cut so deep. Make your cut down, but as you make that transition, that curve to go across the bottom, just back off a little bit. And can you see in there that, okay, see I'm not cutting full depth. I'm still cutting a nice smooth cut, but I'm not cutting full depth. I'm cutting across that with clear little cuts. The other thing you can do too is to go back and resharpen, and that will certainly help. Because about this time, your tool may be getting a little bit dull. Okay, so now my thickness here is about what I want. You know, as a rough out, my thickness here is about the same as this. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to take it off of there. I'll mark on the bottom the month and year and what kind of wood it is, anchor seal it, and when you anchor seal a natural edge bowl, one other thing, super glue. You guys who have natural edge bowls, you know about super glue. You want to glue the edge of the bark with thin super glue all the way around, because that will soak in through that bark and hopefully help keep the bark attached to the wood. Okay, so do that. Please do that. One other thing, you know, sometimes no matter what you do, the bark may come off. So just before the piece of bark flies off, sweep up all the shavings on the floor. It's easier to find. Do it just before the bark flies off. Okay, it makes it a lot easier to find rather than rubbing around on the floor and all the shavings. Okay, so I've super glued the bark all the way around, and I'm going to take it off. When I anchor seal it, I'll anchor seal the ends, the face, inside, the bottom. Do not anchor seal the face of the bark. The reason you don't want to do that is because you're not going to cut it. It's going to stay there. And the anchor seal may be difficult to get off. I haven't had to do it yet, but I always think about it. I think if you do it by accident, you could probably put it under hot water and melt the anchor seal off. It's wax after all. I think you could melt it away. but I'm not sure what the hot water would do to the rest of your bowl. So just try to remember, anchor seal it, don't anchor seal the face of the bark. So now I've put this back, if I wanted to, and I won't take the time to do it. I have one here somewhere, I'll use this one. Thought I got that out. Now, yeah, I'll use this, it's here somewhere. Jam chucking, you know what jam chucking is? You take a piece of wood, you attach it somehow on the lathe. You can put it in a chuck, you can put it on a faceplate, you can put a tenon on it, you can put a recess in it, however you want to attach it. But you have your jam chuck, this piece, you see, where I would grip it, I've got a tenon, I would grip it in the jaws, and then I would round this off to more or less match the shape of the inside of my bowl. Then, when I put that on, that's going to hold it nice and tight when I bring the tailstock up against it, and I can re-round the tenon and then re-round the outside. When I have it at that position, I'm going to go ahead and finish it off, sand it as much as I can, as much as I can reach, and then turn it around. I've got a round tenon now instead of an oval tenon, and the jaws will hold it just fine. So, once I get it round, the tenon round, the outside sanded, I can turn around, chuck it up. Now, I'm going to finish this off to my final thickness, and then hollow out the inside to my final thickness. That both flattens this and re-rounds the inside. So let me just take a couple of token cuts here on the outside, and we'll go to the inside real quick. So that may be warped as those that I passed around. So just come in here and skin off a piece. It may take 2 or 3 large cuts to do that, and that's fine. And then you can do the same thing on the inside. Just probably change the oval so you can round it by going in and making a couple of nice cuts here. And when that's done, remember the wood is dry, so you can go ahead and sand it. Did you, Camille, did you want me to do a half-hour sanding demonstration while I'm here? You guys want a sanding? No. Okay, I won't. Just kidding, Camille. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, so here we have this piece.
Question?
Oh, question, yes, sir.
The bowl that was done here by someone else, I guess they already took it. They have, oh, here it is. They have a little rim above that. Is that typically done, or do you flatten those?
I've done several of those. I think that's really nice. The one that you did, for tonight in the show and tell. That's real nice. Having a little rim up there. I think that looks great. I've done several like that. I think you can do that. The possibilities are endless. You can do so much stuff with these things, whatever you want to do. So I'll do a quick cut here.
Do you ever just finish it green? Like go from without waiting for it to dry?
Not so much anymore. I did when I was a new turner because it was so much fun. I wanted to just turn and finish stuff. But I really don't do that so much anymore. I did it a lot at first, but not now. The question was, I should have told you the question. The question was, do I ever just turn greenwood right to finish? And you can. I really want it to be symmetrical when it's done, not to change shape, be oval and crack and so forth. So I usually don't. So now I've got my little jam chuck in here. I'm just going to round that out a little bit.
Oops.
Okay, is that round enough? Wow. Oh, there it is, good. The mistake I made is that I didn't double check it to be sure it was good and tight. So tighten it down, rotate it, and tighten it again, just to be sure it's good and tight. Sometimes the first side isn't enough. The other thing may be, I thought that was pretty sharp, but maybe it's not. So I will use a different tool. This is a nice sharp bowl gouge, quarter-inch bowl gouge. I'll just use that to round this off. And that may be good enough, let's see. It is. You want to be careful when you use a jam chuck that when you put your piece on it, it doesn't rock on it. You want that ring of this jam chuck to fit around there to give you a good solid feel. The other thing is, if you're doing a finished bowl here, I always I've sanded it and everything, I'll put a paper towel in there and then put some kind of padding material in there. Sometimes the padding material is just 2 or 3 pieces of paper towel. Sometimes I'll have something a little more substantial. So we'll put this on here. I just took the nub off of that. That little piece of bark was right there. That gave me my center point where this was before. I pulled it off because it was loose. And now I've lost my center point. So, you know, it's nice to have that available because you can index it right back in the center. So we're going to estimate center on this. We're going to estimate better. How about that? Good. Perfect, right? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, okay, you guys in the front row, it looks good. Yeah, okay, good. So now, you want to do something with the bottom of this thing. We need to finish off the bottom. When I do that, I generally will put my 3/8" bowl gouge away, pull out the 1/4 inch, just so I'm not going to be quite so aggressive, because this is the end. I don't want to mess this up. So, in this particular case, I'm going to cut away that tenon that I had. And cut down and just a little pin right there where the tailstock is. Oh, I think there's just a little bit of vibration inside on the jam chuck. Yeah, that's what it is. So now I'm just going to cut this off straight here, right across that center jam, and then cut down into it. So just a shallow recess. What that is, that's just squeaking as the wood is working against that jam chuck in there. If you have it padded, it's wood to wood, so if you have it padded, generally it doesn't do that, but sometimes it will anyway. Don't let it throw you. Be sure, check it, be sure it's not loose, but if it's tight, you're probably okay. So now we've done that. What I would do next would be to work that pin down with a smaller gouge, an 1/8" bowl gouge. I just work that down, and then eventually pull that off and carve that away. Now, it's dry wood. If you can take a saw and get most of it off, that's helpful. You can take a little chisel and trim that away. Or, because it's dry, you can take a power sander and just feather it with 80 grit down so it's gone, and then work through your grits and clean it up, and you'll have a very nice piece at the bottom. And then the other thing is, you talked about the edge. Let's talk about that for a minute. Remember, we have bark on 2 sides, and hopefully the super glue that we put on both sides and on the end of the bark has done its job and has held the bark onto the wood. I would do that just before I sanded that side. Let it dry and then sand it, so the glue, fresh glue is in there. But now, how about this edge? And what I found on my bowls, rather than rough it up, which I think that is something I never thought of, I think that that's very workable, I like to make it smooth. But remember, I anchor sealed it. So I would take my pocket knife and scrape this edge and scrape off the wax. Scrape off as much of that wax as I can from the edge on both edges, just so I can get the wax off there. So then I'm going to sand the edge with my power sander. If you leave the wax on, it just gums up the sandpaper. So you take as much wax off first, then I'm going to sand it so it's nice and smooth. The reason I like to do that is because the edge itself shows the grain of the wood so nicely. And I think that's a good thing, that's positive. Frankly, as I've said before, it's your goal. You can do it however you want. You got to please yourself first, and then your spouse or your partner, your friend, and then whoever ends up with it. So that would be the way I would do a square natural edge bowl. Let me pass that around and take a look at the result of tonight. Camille, yeah, I have 20 minutes to 9. May I take a few minutes now and talk about the log bowl? This one? Or would you rather stop? What do you guys want to do?
We've got about 5 more minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Well, let's see what I can do in 5 minutes. Oh, Camille, you erased it. Thank you. That's great. Okay, put this away. How about if I mark it right, do it right this? Can you guys all see that okay? Okay, so the log bowl. Camille, would you mind coming up and holding this for me? Okay, if you hold on that end, yeah, that's good. I want to go over here and get another show and tell piece here. Okay, the secret to the log bowl is that the log has to be longer than it is wide. See, I told you before, when I start, I cut a piece off that's the same length as the width. So now I have a square piece, and make a square bowl. You can make a rectangular bowl by making it a little bit longer, doing the same thing, putting the bowl in the center, just like I did tonight. Or you can take that and make a log bowl. So I'll take that. Here's my headstock. Here's the tailstock. So this is going to be spinning this direction toward me, end for end, like this. And I'm going to first round off the ends here. So I have a curve on the end. That leaves something like this. One of you guys accused me earlier of not being an artist. And you're right. So I apologize for my drawings, okay? So I rounded this off. The next step is to cut the bottom so you can put a tenon on it, just like I did on that one, just like you do on most bowls. So I'm going to cut in here and come up and make a tenon. And then I'm going to shape that tenon to match the jaws of my chuck. Right there, outboard of that tenon, remember, you want to have nice and flat so the index is down on the top edge of your jaws. And then I'm going to turn it around. Let's turn this around. Okay, so now we've chucked it out here. Now, move the tailstock out of the way, and I'm going to start hollowing. As I hollow, I'm doing the hollowing just like any other normal bowl. You cut in into the center, in into the center. And as you do that, it's spinning, so you're actually cutting a hole like this, okay? And you make a few cuts, and then you have got to stop. And the reason you have to stop and look is because the ends of your bowl are longer. They stick out farther than the bark does. And it's so easy to be hollowing away here that you cut right through where your bark is. now you just lost the whole point of the log bowl, okay? So stop and look, because here's the end of your bowl, but here's where the bark is. So you can hollow some more, stop again, look. You okay, I can do one more cut, okay? So you come in and you do one more cut. Now you have your bark, just the width that you're looking for. And you've probably gone deeper than that by now. So we'll erase this inside here. But you have to undercut. This now becomes kind of a hollow form, because as this spins around, the hole is that big, but the inside is much bigger. The secret to success here, though, is that your piece is like this. As it's spinning around, you're hollowing here, and you're cutting outside the edge, the side of the log as it goes around. That's what gives you this deep cut or pattern of bark, okay? It's not, remember, this is not like a standard natural edge bowl. It's a log bowl, so the shape is different and the bark pattern is different. So as you're cutting outside, and what that does is cuts outside the sides of the bowl as you're cutting up underneath here. And you end up with something more like that, undercutting the ends, okay? You can use hollowing tools if you want. The ones I've done, I've used both. Most of them I've just used a round nose scraper up inside there, carefully, because I don't want to catch the bark here as I'm doing that. But a round nose scraper works, or hollowing tools up in there works, whichever seems to work better for you. So that's, thank you, you can take it away. So that's how I do the log bowl. It's a great piece to do, it's fun to do, and it doesn't really take all that long. First one will take a little while. You get better at it, they go faster. Any questions now on any of this I've done tonight? That's amazing. Either it's way too late, or I answered all the questions in the presentation.
Well, let's give Tom a
Thank you very much.